Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Doris MANGRUM, your host, and this is Education in Our Community. Today we're going to be talking about forgiveness and whether it was a spouse who's been unfaithful or a parent who's let a child down or a friend who has betrayed some confidence. More than likely, I would venture to say that everyone in the viewing community today has dealt with forgiveness. Whether to forgive or how to forgive and the misconceptions around it. Well, we're very fortunate today that we're going to get some clarification on this topic because I'm excited to say that I have in the studio with me today as my guest, Carolyn C.J. Jones, who is a forgiveness expert, multi-award winning author, and a creator of several amazing programs that she'll tell us more about as we move forward in the program. So thank you so much for being with me today, Carolyn. So let's just get started.
Okay.
Tell us amazingly about your wonderful background and how you got into becoming, how you moved from where you were to becoming a forgiveness expert.
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
My wonderful background is that I spent 30 years very angry and very bitter over my upbringing, and I drank and drugged over it for 30 years. Finally, when I crashed with my drinking, I got sober. I was desperate, and so I sought sobriety. Well, 4 years into it, I discovered a way to forgive my past. And in that instant, I felt great relief. I felt great freedom, great peace, and that anger and bitterness just dropped away. It was really awesome. And so I was a publisher. I was publishing my book, and Opening the Gates of the Heart, A Journey of Healing, and trying to get that off the ground and sold and all of that at book shows and bookstores. And then I went to a seminar for holistic healers and speakers and coaches, and I realized I have a message for the world about forgiveness, and I can share how I learned to forgive with others so that they can forgive. And I got started in this work.
Wow, amazing story.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did because it's something that so many people struggle with. And
Yes.
Let's just go into that struggle.
Okay.
Why, in your expertise, why is it that people struggle with forgiving? What makes it so challenging? All you have to do is say, I'm sorry. Why is that so difficult?
Because when someone has hurt you somehow, it's like, look at what they did to me. Look at what they did to me, and woe is me. And so we adopt this victim mentality often and keep ourselves in that mindset, and so we're not able to relax a little bit and look at it from the standpoint of where our offender might have been coming from, which is a real basis for learning to forgive.
So as I'm listening to you, what you're saying is it's very important to not just get caught up into woe is me, but then to take a step back and have a sense of, or at least try to have a sense of what's happening on the other side, or why this person may have said or done what they did. What are the benefits? And you clearly have gone from that story of abuse and moving into where you are now as a forgiveness expert. So there are obviously some great benefits that you have experienced personally, but in terms of an individual who is looking now who may be struggling with whether or not to forgive a situation or individual, what would be the benefits of moving from where they are to that place of forgiveness?
Wow. The best benefit is the freedom that you feel. The next best benefit is the peace that you gain. it's incredible. Emotionally, you just feel cleansed. And physically, you are much less at risk for heart disease, heart attack, stroke, cancer. Any disease process is lessened, the risk for it is lessened when you have forgiven. There's been medical research done on that. Fred Luskin, a PhD psychologist at Stanford, has done a lot of work on this in the Stanford Project.
Okay.
The Stanford Forgiveness Project, I should say.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, as I'm listening to you, it's coming to mind, I used to work with little ones, and there was a book about forgiveness, and as you were telling the story, I could just begin to see it in my mind's eye, the mother, the little one needing to forgive something and not forgiving, and then they showed it with the baby as if the baby was being given a bottle, showing it being forgiveness or lack thereof. And as that forgiveness was fed, it grew up to become bitterness, and it got bigger, and it became resentment. So it's helping little ones learn how to forgive and showing what would happen if you don't. So what you were saying was right along the lines of what I remember in that book.
Right.
But in terms of attitude, you know, we think about attitude and how it, you know, impacts our behavior and what we do, how we feel, or how we respond to a particular situation. In terms of forgiveness, what role does attitude play in the bigger picture?
Attitude is everything. In my forgiveness training, I start with mindset training. And we work with willingness, surrender or letting go, and gratitude. And these three things help adjust your mindset so that you can begin to let go of that anger, begin to let go of that bitterness. So you prepare yourself to find one thing within the bad situation for which you're grateful. And with that gratitude, it changes your whole chemistry. It changes you to be able to relax and consider the other person as a human being.
You know, that speaks to life, because, you know, we're going to all run into some situations, whether they need to be forgiven or not, that are bumps in the road.
Right.
Some things that don't go right.
That's right.
And so I'm a firm believer in what you just said. No matter how bad a situation may be, there is something in that situation that is a gift. And if you can get past looking at how bad it is, you will see the gift.
Exactly. In fact, I had a lengthy conversation last night with my mentor and speech coach, and we talked about how with forgiveness and with gratitude, you can, well, that our stories happen in spite of, not in spite of ourselves, but because of who we are. And it's just a really amazing thing.
Wow. Now, I spoke a little bit as I introduced the show a little bit ago about your having some amazing programs. So let's spend a little bit of time of your sharing with the viewers about your programs. Tell us the name of them, what they involve, and how they have helped folk who have participated in them, please.
Oh, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
My first program is called Change Your Story, Change Your Life. And that is a 6-module program that you get via email, and it contains a pre-recorded call and a workbook with writing exercises in it that I guide you through. From this program, you gain the freedom, you begin to gain freedom from resentment. And I have a client that I'd like to tell you about. Her name is Susie.
Okay.
When she came to me, she was upset about her father. She had had a very rocky relationship with her father, and he had died 20 years earlier. So she really had no way to talk to him to resolve things. She had done a lot of self-work, and read a lot of self-help books, and nothing seemed to really help. Then she heard how I forgave my father, and she thought, if anyone can help me forgive, it is this woman.
Okay.
So she signed up for my program, Change Your Story, Change Your Life, and took it. And as a result, she realized that her father had loved her her entire life. That was a new realization for her. She didn't realize that before.
What particularly do you believe triggered that for her in the program? What did she learn that caused her to know that her dad had loved her all these years and now I know it? What do you think it was that opened that up to her?
To look at, I encourage people to look at your offender as a wounded human being who's wounded just like you are.
That's powerful.
Very powerful. Very powerful. I'll tell you about my father and that story later.
Okay. No, go ahead. Share it now.
I'll share it now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Well, as I said before, I spent 30 years very angry and bitter. And a lot of that was, most of that was over my parents, and especially my father. Then when I was 3 years sober, I was doing a self-appraisal, and I realized that I used to get drunk and yell and scream at the man I was with at the time that they were worthless and would never amount to anything. That was horrible that I said those things, and I felt terrible. But the thing is, I realized in that minute, I didn't even mean it about them. I meant it about myself.
Wow.
That was a huge aha, Doris, because I realized, wow, then it stands to reason that all those years, my father called me worthless and said I would never amount to anything. He meant it about himself and not about me.
Yes. Wow. Wow.
In that instant, that is when I melted. And I saw him as just another human being who was wounded, just like me.
Wow.
Just like me.
As I'm listening, I am thinking in terms of, you know, bullying and you know, the parallels that you're drawing, and it takes on, in terms of the examples that we've talked about thus far, is that it takes on this form of you know, I'm here and you're there, or I'm going to see how much I can pummel you into the ground. But it typically is them with their shortcomings.
Yes.
This, oh my goodness.
Yes.
You know, one of the things that often comes, you know, I do training as well, and forgiving, of course, comes up. And, you know, I can't forgive, you don't know, what I've been involved in or what this person did to me. And there's no way I'm going to forget this, ever, ever, ever. Right. And so one of the things that I talk about, and that I want you to either tell me I'm wrong or tell me it's a good thing, is that forgiving and forgetting are not a salt and pepper shaker, that they don't have to be on the same shelf together, that forgiving is a separate piece from forgetting, and that I think if people understood that it might be a little bit easier to forgive. So tell me your thoughts about forgiving and forgetting, and if they are a pair, and if they aren't, why not, etc.
They actually are a pair.
Okay.
And they're a pair because when you forgive, you don't forget. You don't forget what happened. That's not what forgiveness is all about. But forgiveness will help you remember with a softer, more gentle heart.
Thank you, Carolyn, because that's pretty much what I've been saying. I say, you know, if you forgive, you're not going to forget, because first of all, if it's something that needs to be forgiven, that means it's big enough in your mind that you're not going to forget it. You know, someone accidentally bumps into you as you're walking in the store. Oh, I'm sorry, no problem. You don't even remember that.
That's right.
Because it wasn't big enough to remember. But those situations in our lives that are large enough for it to carry some weight, we're not going to usually forget them. So thank you for validating that I've
Yes.
been saying the right thing.
Yes, you've been saying the right thing.
Okay.
And it always makes me cringe when I hear people say forgive and forget.
Yes, yes.
Because what we're asking people to do is to get rid of something that is a part of them now. It's almost like it's a part of their DNA,
Okay.
if you will. And you can't forget those things.
I can very much see that it could be a part of their DNA, particularly because I've heard some people that have carried things for decades.
Yes.
And so it's just, and they'll tell you, it's who I am. Don't even talk to me about that. Don't even talk to me about that person.
Yes.
Can't even be in the same room. See them coming down one side of the street, they go down the other side of the street.
Right, right.
So what are, or are there any, I mean, you've mentioned forgiving and forgetting, but are there parallels to forgiveness and unforgiveness? You know, are there some similarities in holding on? And are there anything to letting go? What do you get from holding on? There's got to be some bonus in it, I would think.
Well,
what is, if any?
I think you get the self-righteousness that you are right.
Okay, okay, that makes sense.
You are right. And I was wronged by you, and I'm right about that. But what you miss is a lifetime of peace and happiness and gentleness, compassion, gratitude. You miss all those wonderful things that exist in life that set you free.
And at the end of the day, you're giving more power. You just keep empowering that thing or that person who has done what they've done, who more than likely may be moving on with their life, hadn't even thought about it.
Oh, they don't even think about you.
Right.
You're giving them your power. When you do not forgive, you are giving them your power.
Wow, wow, wow. This is so wonderful. I'm totally enjoying this. But before we get too far along the show, I want to make sure that our viewers have an opportunity to know how they might be able to contact you when the show's over. So why don't you tell our viewers how they can contact you, your website, that kind of thing.
Okay. My website is CarolynCJJones.com. And my email is CarolynCJJones@yahoo.com. And when I say Carolyn C.J. Jones, that's spelled CarolynCJJones. There are 2 J's. And you can even call me, and I give out my number, 415-883-8325.
Okay, you want to repeat that again?
All of it?
Your number and your website.
My website is CarolynCJJones.com, and my phone number is 415-883-8325.
Okay. You know, I know that for me personally, I feel better when I forgive something. You know, it's like this, it's like, oh, I'm so happy I did that. Why have I held on to this for such a long time? Talk to our viewers about the benefits. You know, you've talked about what can happen on the other side when you don't. You know, cancer, stress, heart disease. What happens to one when they forgive? What in terms of mental health, physically, and just overall benefits?
Well, your health benefits are tremendous. And like I said, it lowers the risk of heart disease, heart attack, stroke, even cancer when you do forgive. And emotionally, spiritually, it is a freedom that is incredible. I don't even know how to describe it, because for me, it was just unbelievably freeing when I forgave. And I took that with me in my life and became able to really feel deep compassion for people, for others, deep compassion for myself. And I think especially that compassion is a wonderful thing to feel. A wonderful thing to feel.
Are there, if you will, I know there's, you know, for each person is going to be different, I know, even before
Sure.
asking you this question. But would there be a certain set of steps, if you will, that you would place in terms of forgiveness? Where would someone who's struggling right now begin to move, to help them move forward? If they just can't go from where they are right now to, I forgive you.
No.
How do they get to that place?
Forgiveness is a process. And to go back to talking about my program really briefly,
Okay.
The 6-module one, that program leads you through the process, and it helps you get to that place. But it starts basically with developing willingness, the mindset of willingness. And then, are you willing to let go of your anger? Are you willing to let go of your blame? After you get to that point of letting go, that's when I encourage gratitude and trying to find one thing in that difficult situation for which you can be grateful. For example, the thing that took me down to my bottom with my drinking was an unrequited love. I had felt so strongly with my whole being that this man loved me like I loved him. I thought we were soulmates. So I left my 20-year marriage to be with him and found out he didn't even care for me. I was devastated, emotionally shattered, if you can imagine.
Wow.
Just an aside, my marriage was pretty much dead at that point in time for me to be able to leave it. But down the road, after I learned to forgive and learned gratitude, I became grateful for that excruciating experience.
Wow, yes.
Yes, for 4 reasons.
Okay.
1, it pried me out of a terribly dysfunctional marriage. 2, it got me sober. 3, it led me to forgiveness. And 4, it led me to the work I'm doing today.
Wow. So step 1, willingness.
Become willing.
Step 2,
Let go.
let go. Step 3,
Find gratitude.
and step 4, become a forgiveness expert.
Yeah, right. There's a few steps in between. Compassion is a real big part of it. And developing compassion for the other person and seeing them as a wounded person. And here again is willingness. Because if you can become willing to consider that your offender is a wounded being or was a wounded being at the time that they hurt you, it makes it palatable.
Okay. You know, a question has come to mind for me as I'm listening to your very powerful personal story. Wow. The question is, you now are a forgiveness expert, and so I don't know if I'm asking the right person. Is there anything in your estimation, your powerful personal story, that's unforgivable?
That's a very good question. And what raced through my mind when you asked it was, there are some things that it's personal, it's individual. There may be some things that you are not able to forgive. And I invite you to give it your best shot. Things that come to mind are rape and murder and things like that. And those things have been forgiven by those who have endured them when they realize that it's only hurting them. They're the ones drinking the poison, while the murderer or the rapist or whatever is not even thinking about what, well, they probably are thinking about what they did to you, but do you am I making sense?
Yes, it makes a perfect sense. And so Is there, so it's still the same working process then?
Yes.
Regardless of the extent or the depth of,
Yes.
of the deed.
Yes.
But you may not work through. Is there any, I guess, is there a halfway to forgiveness that's a happy medium, I guess, if, around those kinds of things? Because there's some awful things that happen to people.
There are.
And you know, even though we have this wonderful information that you've shared, the willingness, the gratitude, the compassion, and understanding that even out of this negative, something good has come, it sounds like it would probably be the very same thing for something who's had a very atrocious, unforgivable, if you will, in our mindsets, way of thinking for that person as well.
Right,
Wow.
right, yes.
Wow.
And something that I neglected to mention is, and this is a big part of it, after one looks at willingness, surrender, and gratitude, or letting go and gratitude, we look at ourselves and we look at our part in the situation.
Wow, yes.
And how did we,
What did we add
what
to
did
it?
we do?
Yes.
And what did we do to the other person?
Yes. What part did we perhaps play? Sometimes there's nothing that you've done.
That's right.
But in other times we
That's
need to,
right.
when we're searching for how could this have happened to me, we need to look at what did I do to cause it, or did I do something that I now need to work on so that it doesn't happen again. Oh
Exactly.
my, that's powerful.
Very powerful.
Can you believe it or not, we are getting near the end of our
Really?
time.
Wow.
Are there some words of wisdom around forgiveness that you'd like to leave with the viewers? Some things that you want to reiterate around the things that we've talked about today that you want to leave on the minds of those who are watching about forgiveness versus unforgiveness?
Well, I would like to say, again, to look at your offender with the eyes of compassion if you can. It took me a year of looking again and again with compassion at my parents to be able to forgive them. So it is a process and it does take time. And allow yourself that time. Allow yourself to grieve the innocence that you lost because of the offense.
Wow. Thank you so much. You know, when I knew you were coming today, I looked at a few things that they said that forgiveness doesn't mean, and I think I'll close with those. Forgiveness doesn't mean that you're pardoning or excusing the other person's actions. Would you agree with that?
That's right.
Forgiveness doesn't mean you need to tell the person that he or she is forgiven, because it could have been forgiven in your heart. It could be forgiven after that person has long been gone and dead.
Very
it could be
true.
something that's written, and I know you do a part of that. We didn't get a chance to talk about that.
That's right.
Forgiveness doesn't mean you have any more feelings about the situation.
That's right.
Forgiveness isn't something that you do for you, for the other person, but it's something that you do for you.
Can I make one sentence?
Very quickly.
Forgiveness is the choice we make to hurt and suffer less, even though we're wounded.
Wow. That's our program today on forgiveness. I hope that you have received something that will be helpful to you. And now go out and make this a great day. Do something good for someone else. Thank you so much. It was so much fun.
It was great.